now is some of these girls are actually having barcodes tattooed on them with underneath the inscription of the man who owns her, so he can sell her. They're working to actually develop the technology now, because it's just business, remember, to actually be able to scan the barcode on the girl to manage the transaction.
This isn't some faraway issue, or this isn't something that just happens to what you would troubled kids, or people that you would kind of characteristically think might be vulnerable, but this could happen really to a friend, a neighbor, or your family.
The estimates are that over 1,600 children annually are trafficked in Kansas City.
He killed the puppy in front of her and said, I will do the same thing, and begins to name every family member that he knows about, because she's told him, but he's never met, and they've never seen him, and they don't know he exists.
I'm broken. They broke me. I'm never going to be whole again.
My name is Russ Tuttle, and I'm the catalyst and managing director of an organization called the Stop Trafficking Project. And I'm also one of the founding board members of an organization called Kansas City Street Hope. So sex trafficking is really coercion and forced manipulation of any person to perform a sexual favor for really anything in return. A lot of people think it has to be money, but a lot of times with kids who are particularly under the age of 16, a lot of times it's an enticement with just simply a place to stay. If they need a place to stay, it could even be as simple as food. It's called survival sex. A lot of times from there, it grows into the other areas where a lot of times you see what happens is these pimps will get a young girl into a horrible situation where they're being advertised on Backpage.com, they're being sold, the phone's ringing off the hook. Every time the door of a hotel room knocks, it's the next trick. And so how does a girl survive that situation? Well, a lot of times what they'll tell me, the only way they can really survive is to introduce alcohol and drugs into their system, a lot of times forced on them by the pimp. So then a pimp will hold that against them, because then these girls are getting addicted, and they'll say, well, I'm not going to get you your next fix until you turn the next trick. Then what happens is I've yet to meet a girl who's been sold for sex whoever told me that I got to keep the money I made. Never happened. So what happens is these pimps and these traffickers, they sell the girls, and then the money is collected, and the girls never see a penny of it. And so really it's slavery in this sense, that a person owns another human being and forces them to do something completely against their will for monetary benefit and for a pleasure of a client. And so specifically within sex trafficking, literally our girls in America and our young guys are being sold like cheap pizza. Because what happens is that I tell people that your cell phone is the largest brothel in America, because you can get on any cell phone anywhere with internet access. And sitting here in this interview, I could access different pages here in the local Kansas City area, and I could order a girl like I'm ordering pizza. It's really that horrendous. And so it really is an issue of slavery.
I am Linda Marie Odo. Well, I always kind of felt like the black sheep of my family. My parents, they were drug addicts and alcoholics. It was very violent and very abusive. Our house was always disgusting. We never had much money, so there was never really any food. It was my brother and I. It didn't go well. I do remember that our relatives did take us in for a little bit, and then my mom took us back, and we moved into a trailer park. And then one day, she locked us out, so child services, I guess, were called, and then I didn't see my brother for a very long time. We were sent to 2 different foster homes, and that's where any abuse hit like overdrive. I was molested, and it's also where I started smoking marijuana. At the age of 10 is when I started. dabbled with other drugs by like 13, I think. I don't know, I was always experimenting with stuff. I didn't care for school at all. I was smart. I was really smart. But I just didn't care. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. My life sucked. Why try? So I skipped class a lot, ran away a lot. Yeah.
Well, it's really been around for a very long time. What really started to happen was in the early 2000s, where there was a couple of local law enforcement officers who found out that there were kids in Texas who were from Kansas City being sold for sex. And all of a sudden they started to become more aware of how within 36 to 48 hours, kids in Kansas City, particularly runaways, can within hours be propositioned for sex. A lot of times just survival sex, because a kid's on the street wandering around, has friends, and go, I need a place to stay. And so it's kind of like, well, you have to do this if I'm going to give you a place to stay. And within hours, those kids can be anywhere from Chicago to New York to the West Coast and down to Texas. That's really kind of the routes. And so that really, I think, was as far as an official recognition that kids under the age of 18, 17, 16 on down, particularly, are literally being advertised and sold for sex, really was kind of back in that time period. But sadly, the industry of prostitution's been around forever, but what people used to think was those people, those women particularly, are signing up to do it because they want to do it, they want the money. And that's simply not true. They're always coerced or forced or manipulated into that lifestyle, always, everyone that you talk to.
I had a crush on this guy. His name was Joseph. And he worked at this little like hot dog shop that I always go to. He was really good friends with Andy. And Andy was creepy. He was really like creepy. He just sent off these weird vibes. I only hung out with him because of Joseph. So I was not too fond of Andy, but he was still a friend. So they were kind of like gangster and rapper wannabes. Like they were always doing drugs and having parties and putting together mixtapes, and I don't know, it was just really fun.
I'm Mary Oker, and I'm a member of Westside Family Church, and I've been involved with a group called Casey Street Hope. One of the common types that is used for recruiting is what's called the older boyfriend. So there may be a girl who is befriended by a boy or a young man who is maybe in his early 20s, and she's only in high school, and he may shower her with affection and gifts and persuade her in thinking that they're having a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, when he may in fact be a trafficker or working for a trafficker, and the intention really is not to have a relationship with her, but to get her engaged in this, for them, a business.
I'm working with a young girl who's almost 19 now, but when she was 12, she was hanging out at one of our local malls in the greater Kansas City area. And she was with 3 other friends. The parents dropped them off, and these 4 12-year-old girls are hanging out at the mall. And a couple older guys, nicely dressed, real kind, talking to them, start hanging out with them. And one of the guys in particular had an interest in this girl and pulled her aside and said, "Oh, you're so pretty, you're so strikingly funny, you make me laugh." He basically told this little girl everything any 12-year-old would want to hear. The long story short is it progressed to the point to where she started falling in love with this guy. And that's what's called Romeo pimping. So these younger, vulnerable girls will meet this older guy that they think is going to be a boyfriend. He kind of becomes a boyfriend. In this girl's situation, he got to know everything about her family, but never met her. So this girl had a mom and a dad at home, and a younger sister, a few years younger than she was. She was active in school, active in student organizations. She played sports. She was a straight-A student. And this guy found the vulnerability in her life and began to play on that vulnerability. All of us, even adults, have a vulnerability, some area of weakness. And these guys are master manipulators of finding what that area of weakness is. And they go after it. And he was just relentless and relentless, and finally got this girl to the point to where she was so in love with this guy, she's really did anything for him. Then he turned on her and instead of being the nice older boyfriend, all of a sudden he was incredibly vicious. I mean, he raped her brutally and videotaped and photographed the entire event. Within half an hour, was advertising her online, and his phone was ringing off the hook because she was fresh and brand new. And for the next several years, from the time she was 12 until she was 17, she was sold between 11 different pimps in the greater Kansas City area. And it all started with a very simple process of she was just hanging out at the mall and met a nicer older guy.
One day, when I was like 16, a terrible report card was coming into my house, and I knew that I was going to get in so much trouble. So I bailed and grabbed my stuff and I ran. And Joseph and Andy picked me up, and they took me with them, and we went to a party in a hotel in Atlantic City and partied till we passed out. And I remember I woke up and I couldn't move. I was drugged so much where I had no control over my own body, and Andy raped me. I didn't say anything to anyone. I was just terrified. And Andy pretended it didn't happen. And then he did it again. And then Joseph and Andy talked to me about prostitution. And they always said, like, you gotta get paid for sleeping with someone. It's not to like, it's so much fun. And I didn't want to do it. It sounded dumb and stupid. Very, very stupid. But I mean, I did it once for Joseph, I guess. And I told him after that I never wanted to do it again. But it was too late. I had no family. Like, they were my family. That's all I had. I lived with them. They provided for me. And they said that I needed to pitch in. I needed to start making money. And I was 16, I didn't have a GED or anything. I was not qualified for any job, except for that one.
The challenge is it is so difficult to rescue girls that are stuck in this life. A lot of times they are so fearful, mixed with this emotion of they're young and they think they're in love, that even when they do get out of the life, they're scared to testify against the pimp. So everybody goes free, everybody walks because of the manipulation. I am aware of situations where a girl was given a puppy. Always wanted a little puppy dog. So that was one of the things in the grooming process. Well, I'll buy you a puppy dog. And, obviously it's not going to be at her house, but, whenever they're together, she gets to see the puppy dog. When it came to the time for the transition to go from him being this really nice older boyfriend to being this guy who's selling her, he killed the puppy in front of her and said, I will do the same thing, and begins to name every family member that he knows about, because she's told him, but he's never met, and they've never seen him, and they don't know he exists. So she's just seen him kill the dog. And she believes he will do that to her family members. So she will do anything and whatever he tells her to do.
I learned a little bit later that they were planning this huge move where they had this other girl who I always thought was Andy's girlfriend. Turns out she was used for prostitution, just like I was. I escaped a few times, but each time Andy would end up calling and saying that he would find me and kill me. And then Joseph would use a different method. He would apologize and tell me that we could be a family again. And Joseph's the only real family that I've ever really had. So I'd come back. And then when I'd get back, I'd realize that I was an idiot for coming back, 'cause this was all a lie.
It's really important to give girls who come out of sex trafficking a web of services that just kind of provides all their needs, because they have spiritual needs, they have health needs, they have counseling needs. A lot of times these young girls will have a little child themselves, and so the needs are really extensive. So then it's important to find them a safe place to stay. It's important to find them a family setting, an environment where they can kind of learn to grow and kind of continue on in their lives. Because the goal is not just to get them rescued. A lot of times it's a really dramatic story of how these girls are empowered to leave the life. But it's not enough to get them out. You have to care for them. And a lot of times it can take up to 1 to 3 years, if not longer, for a girl to really get to a place to where she's kind of ready to start to really kind of enter society again.
It's been hard. I've spent the last 4 years trying to find my way. I've had a lot of jobs, but nothing ever stuck. I am now homeless. I had my own apartment, but I lost it because I couldn't pay the bills. I don't really know who I am. Still trying to, I don't know, find my own way, I guess. People are always like, oh, you've already done that, you've already prostituted, you've already been a call girl, a hoe. I mean, they say I'll always be that. And I look at them and I'm like, no, I won't, because it's never who I was. It's never what I wanted. They steal from us, the people who put us in the sex trafficking. I mean, our sense of self, freedom, our independence, our ability to be comfortable in our own skin, it's completely gone once you've been in that environment. I wish there was someone who understood this and could be there for me. I'm broken. They broke me. I'm never gonna be whole again.
In 2013, the University of Arizona conducted a study, and there were 15 cities that were part of the study, and they did a decoy ad to see what kind of responses they would get for child sex, and Kansas City ranked second.
Yeah, so we're really a generation or two away from losing our kids to this issue, because one of the reasons why people need to care about this is if kids are growing up being sold for sex, they are never going to be able to have good, healthy relationships on their own at some point and be contributing members of society. The misconceptions of sex trafficking are that, well, we understand it's happening in exotic countries like India and Cambodia and Thailand. And in America, we're not okay with that, but it's a lot easier to swallow because we think a solution is, all right, a $20 check to some organization that's over there working on that, and I've done my duty. When people think about sex trafficking right here in America, they also think that, well, it's foreign women being brought here and they work in massage parlors or they do this kind of stuff and they're forced into prostitution in other realms. Those things do happen, but the statistics are that for every one foreign female who is brought out of the country into America, that for every one, there are 17 American kids being sold for sex.
Our friends and neighbors can be at risk or could be involved, and so I think as a community we don't want this to happen to our kids in our community. So
it's having a huge impact on society. It's having an impact in our schools, because even school funding decreases when a kid is taken out of school because they're all of a sudden probably most likely categorized as a runaway because all of a sudden they're now in school, but they may be being sold for sex and they're being sold by traffickers. That's now income that the school doesn't get because they get a certain amount of income for every student who attends the school. So it has a deep impact all the way across. One of the other challenges is this glorification of the pimp culture. Everything within pimp culture is supposed to be this really great thing. And there are very few things within the pimp culture that are worth being glorified. Kids think this is an easy way to make money. The kids don't get the money. And so really kind of the duh factor of why is this a problem in society is, first of all, it's completely morally wrong. The main reason is because it diminishes our awesome teenagers in this country and younger to simply become a product, a commodity to be bought and sold. Cheap pizza you can order on your phone. Kids are worth a lot more than that. There's another misconception that this is a victimless crime. So there's a guy, he's got money, he wants to pay to have sex with some girl, he's willing to pay money for it, and he doesn't care if she's 12 or 11 or 16, he doesn't care. What is not a misconception is, sadly, is that there are a lot of men who are paying for underage kids and they don't care. In fact, they want them younger. That is something that really makes me angry. The challenge is that people say this is a victimless crime because, again, the misconception is that, well, the girls want to do it. It's just boys being boys, men being men. They have these urges and these desires. They have the money, so they may as well pay ahead and go for it. So what's the problem? Nobody's being hurt and nobody's being harmed. That is completely false. Everyone is being harmed because every man who's being caught in the situation, sadly, they're usually married and usually have children. Once that is outed, an entire family is ruined. Their jobs, their careers are ruined. What's more tragic is that the young kids who are being victimized and sold for sex, their lives are completely ruined. So there's a real apathy towards this issue happening. We think, well, they're just bad kids and there's nothing we can do about it. So really what this is destroying lives. It's destroying lives at multiple levels.
I shared with you a little bit about a video that I saw about a girl who I talked about. One of the tactics is sometimes the older boyfriend as a recruitment tactic that a human trafficker may take. And this was a girl just like it would be in your school or would be a friend of yours. And she was working as a waitress. She had met a couple who had come into the restaurant, and they had asked her some questions about her preferences. And then a couple weeks later, a young man had come in, kind of meeting her ideal of a boyfriend, and he befriended her. And she fell victim to his lies because his whole intent was not to have a relationship with her or be a friend to her, but was to have her work and make money for him through stripping and through prostitution. And so I think that hit home for me to say that this isn't some faraway issue, or this isn't something that just happens to what you would troubled kids, or people that you would kind of characteristically think might be vulnerable, but this could happen really to a friend, a neighbor, or your family.
Yeah, so we're really in the center of the country, and so like I said earlier, is a girl can literally be anywhere within the United States within hours once she's picked up and taken away. So because we're so central, because there's trains coming through here, there's buses, there's trucks, and all the freeway system, it is incredibly easy for a girl to just be disappearing within hours. I hope that in Kansas City specifically, within 10 years, that we've made a huge and major dent, and here's what has to happen for that to occur. We need to target initially 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to begin to get the word out that, listen, there are people out there, this is what they are attempting to do, here's how you can recognize it, here's how you can stand up to it. I really think prevention is the key. So one of the ways you have to think about human trafficking, particularly sex trafficking of kids, is imagine that there's a 50-gallon barrel and it's filled with water, and the water represents kids that are being forcibly raped for profit, and the average age that kids are being sold for sex is at 12. That's the average entry age. And so there's a lot of organizations trying to rescue people, and at best, even the organizations that are really well funded and really have their act together, at best, imagine that you're trying to empty this big 50-gallon barrel with a toothpick flicking water out while a fire hose is filling it. So if you're going to empty the barrel, the first thing that common sense tells you to do is shut the fire hose off. And that's what we call prevention and the whole effort of ending domestic minor sex trafficking. So what we're doing specifically as an organization is we've got a couple of different presentations that we are taking to student groups in churches and whatever organizations, and really working hard to try to get this presentation into schools. It's a presentation called Deceptions, and it kind of walks through a story in a PowerPoint presentation that's really interactive to help kids understand what the lures of sex trafficking are and how the role of the internet and social media and sexting and all those kind of things play into this whole kind of a combo platter of how kids get caught up in this very real business. And the problem is there's demand for the product. That's what's really sad. So our efforts specifically as an organization are to try to do prevention things to help kids understand these things, and then also to teach people why this is wrong, why you shouldn't even be doing this.
I think the other thing that kids can do is just be aware of the connection point between pornography and ultimately folks becoming involved with human trafficking. I would just encourage all kids to keep that out of their life and not become involved, not view it, and keep a purity in that area of their life.
Well, it's a demand-driven business. And so one of the engines that drives domestic minor sex trafficking is the issue of pornography. And because the pornography use is so rampant in America, and even soft porn through advertising in a lot of different areas, it really is the engine that is feeding this. And then what happens is now there's pressure on teenagers within sexting and the dating relationships within even as young as middle schools, and sometimes into early or late elementary school, even starting at 6th grade, 5th grade, we're even seeing. There's just this tremendous pressure from society because it is normalized really abhorrent sexual behavior. And so what that does is that then allows the whole issue of sex trafficking to grow stronger. So specifically here in Kansas City, there was a study done in June of 2013. And in a 24-hour time period, it was discovered that there were over 106,000 men in a 24-hour time period online, not looking at porn, but shopping for sex. That's over 14% of the male population in the greater Kansas City area. So if there is demand and people are willing to pay money to literally rape children for profit, then there are business people willing to step up and say, I'm going to recruit profit. And so they're recruiting our product, which is our awesome, amazing teenagers and younger in America and here in the greater Kansas City area. Kids are vulnerable to be product, to be sold in this business. And so that's really where the big challenge is, which is why we put a big emphasis on helping kids understand how vulnerable they are.
My name is Matt Adams, and I'm the pastor of Community Impact for Westside Family Church. Westside helped to form a coalition of churches in Kansas City called KC Street Hope, and there are about 20 churches that are paired up with us to fight child sex trafficking in Kansas City. In addition to the churches, we're partnered with several community organizations such as KVC, which does most of the foster care on Kansas side, Exodus Cry, which is a really significant anti-trafficking ministry out of Grandview, Kids TLC, which rescues teenagers, runaways, troubled kids. I think about 4 or 5 other organizations as well.
There's actually a home starting, hopefully in the spring, which will be one of the first homes really in the region, specifically just for underage girls. And a long-term desire and goal is there will be 3 homes, one for just boys, because the guys are targeted just as well. Not nearly in high numbers, but guys are also being targeted for this. So the goal is to have 3 different separate safe homes with programs that will go between 1 to 3 years. One would be for underage girls, one for underage boys, and then one for women over 18. And the goal being to work with a lot of different organizations who are collaborating together to say we're going to pool our resources and our expertise so that when a girl comes out of that situation, needs a safe place, number one, they have a physical, tangible place where they can be safe, but then to wrap all the things around them that they need, everything from the job training to helping with education to finances to health care to spiritual help to all those things. And so that's really, and so we're excited in Kansas City that hopefully by this spring, one of the first homes will be opened. Some of the statistics are that less than 1% of people are rescued out of sex trafficking. And they tell us about 297,000 kids are vulnerable to being sex trafficked in America every year. So you do the numbers on that. So that's why prevention really is the key, because we're never going to rescue all these girls. We're never going to arrest all the people that are buying girls. We're never going to arrest all the people that are selling girls. The key is prevention to shut this thing off. Kind of what I alluded to earlier, shutting the fire hose off that's filling the 50-gallon barrel while we're trying to empty it. So that really is the key. So in 10 years, particularly here in the greater Kansas City area, I see several things happening through Kansas City Street Hope, an organization that is a church-based coalition. There's a lot of churches coming together to work with every organization in the area that is working with at-risk kids. And so I see a collaborative effort coming together in powerful ways within the next 10 years that when we do find kids and we can empower them to get out of life, there's going to be a huge amount of resources available to kids to help them get back on their feet. I really see the community coming together with really indignation and anger over this issue to the point to where they're going to be willing to really do the tough things necessary to help get the word out to kids and to caring adults that this really is truly happening in our area and we need to do something about it. So within 10 years, I don't see us having the problem solved, but in 10 years, I see us being way further down the line. My goal is that Kansas City will not be a safe place for pimps and traffickers to operate. It is my goal and my desire that Kansas City will become known as a place where it is not good to engage in the business of selling kids for sex.
I would love to see every high school in our area have an awareness club so that kids would know what to look out for to protect themselves and to protect others in their school.
I guess really the final thing I would say is, particularly teens who are watching this, is number one, let this sink in that you guys are better than what people are saying. People have this misconception that teenagers are really vulnerable and they're just going to fall for this. I don't believe that to be true. Are teenagers falling for this? Yes, they are. But is it happening en masse? Not necessarily. So what I would say is, let's rise up as teens. Let's show adults that we refuse to be manipulated and coerced and victimized in this manner.
So what are you waiting for? Join us and stand up to stop sex trafficking in Kansas City and all around the world. You can start by looking up KC Street Hope and donating today.